Welcome to the podcast with Sam and Marsh. We have the luxury of having Daniel Buckley.
Good intro music.
Are we actually on?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. So I wanted to connect a couple dots before we start. Were you born on the Gold Coast?
No. Yeah.
And
You were.
Yeah, I was.
Oh.
Yeah.
because you're not going to believe this, I think this is crazy. Are your parents John and Anita?
Yeah. How did you know that?
I think we're actually related.
Oh, no way.
Meet
I think
your
he might be
long-lost
my-
brother,
Have a look.
Samuel.
I think you might be my older sister.
It's funny, I was like thinking about coming here and I was like, I'm going to, hopefully Marsh asked me, so tell me a bit about yourself. I'll be like, I've got two sisters.
No chance, bro. I mean, well before
I
you,
was
bro.
really hoping.
I planned this that started this conversation for 4 hours this morning.
I bet you did.
Skipped my prayer time and just sat there.
Taylor's going to be busy editing this, I think.
Straight raw copy, Tay. Raw copy.
Thanks for joining us, Dan.
Yeah.
Good.
And we had your beautiful, gracious wife not long ago.
Good.
And
Good.
after hearing her side of the story,
Yeah, I know. Dobbed in hard.
we're like, we've got to get Dan. So, yeah, it's great you're here. So maybe just kick off, tell about your childhood, schools, what have you. Born on the Gold Coast, obviously.
Yeah, normal childhood, I guess, for me. It seemed normal. Born on the Gold Coast, went to one primary school, went to two high schools. So I went to Nerang High for 8 till 11, and then Mum and Dad had split for that period of time, so I went to Southport for grade 12. I didn't really like school. Yeah, I wasn't a good student, especially in high school. I sort of just gave up a little bit. Did a few stupid things, especially in grade 12.
But what was it like shifting school for 1 year?
Yeah, it was pretty rough.
Yeah.
I wasn't someone who was good at making friends, so I didn't really seek friends. So all the guys I had from 8 till 11 were people that I'd had from primary school, even basically in sport and stuff. So
Were you really not good at making friends?
yeah, it's shocking, isn't it? It's
And
hard to believe.
No, I'm serious. You had heaps of friends.
Yeah, but they were like long-term friends. If I was put in an environment with new people, I was just I'd rather just stay doing my own thing.
Wow.
Yeah. So I didn't really seek out friendships when I got to my new school. And there was one guy who was just a real friendly guy, and he just sort of took it upon himself to, show me around and help me out a bit.
Nice.
And then through him, I made a few friends, and eventually, because by that stage in grade 12, everyone is in their little groups.
They're all sorted, eh?
Yeah, totally. So there's like the surfy group and the stoner group and the nerds and all that sort of stuff. Nothing wrong with any of those groups, obviously, except for the stoners.
You nailed the first two.
Yeah, I fell right into that stoner group. I ended up falling into the stoner group.
Really?
This one dude, yeah, and me and him just became best mates, and he lived in Palm Beach and I was in Miami, and we were going to Southport school, so he drove a BMW without a licence every day to school.
What?
So he just picked me up on the highway, and there'd be a full Cheech and Chong sesh in the car on the way to school, and then...
For real?
Yeah.
You know who Cheech and Chong are, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'd sort of just get into school at whatever time, and I'd usually fall asleep in most of my subjects and then nick off at lunchtime to have another smoke and then come back again. And
For real?
yeah, that was pretty much the whole of grade 12. And so it became a bit of a thing. Like it was, everyone just knew, and they laughed every time we arrived to classes, and even the teachers, they sort of just were like, oh, well, here's these guys again. Just let him do his thing up the back there quietly.
Don't let him play with the Bunsen burner.
Yeah. So I just was failing every subject. And then right at the end, I had a couple of really good teachers. Like they asked me, why are you here? I said, I'm here because my mum and dad said if I don't go to school, I have to get a job. So they're like, oh, great. So inspiring. And so they just sort of put up with me. But right at the end, they said, look, you're really close to passing. All you've got to do is just have a go. So I think the last 2 months of school, last term, I just basically said to Mum, "Oh, can you help me out with some of my assignments?" And she sat down and sort of helped me do a few bits
Basically
and things.
did them for you.
No, she was really good.
Yeah.
She made me go through the process.
Oh, that's good.
And I wasn't a stupid kid, but I just didn't try. I thought I was stupid, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
And so I just smashed my last couple of assignments and just scraped in with like C's
Yeah.
for the end of grade 12. So I got my grade 12 certificate with like just a few passes on
Well,
there.
that's good.
So yeah, it wasn't a complete waste.
Bro, you just reminded me of Mum doing assignments,
Yeah.
all the time.
She a beast.
Mum's smart, yeah.
Yeah.
She's a hard worker.
But
And
it was a real pain though, because she would do it and give you everything you need, but she'd make you sit there the whole
Yeah, you
time
had
with
to-
her. And I'm like, no, I know you can do it.
yeah, that was I remember that. Come
Like
on, Mum,
just-
you may as well just do it. You've pretty much done it. But she was
She's
good
not
at
going to buy that.
No, she was good at it. Mum was
She's real
super good.
And she
helping
loves
out.
it. She
Yeah.
loves
Were
helping.
you living with?
I
your
was
mum?
actually living with Dad most of the time, but I would stay with Mum a bit. So it must have been one of the times I was at her house. Yeah.
Did you Did they know you were?
I don't know. I don't know. No, I don't think. Maybe Dad might have had a bit more of a clue. I mean, I got busted smoking when I was a little bit younger, before all that went down, before the separation and everything. And Mum freaked. Dad was pretty,
Chilled.
yeah, it was like, oh, well,
He's like,
I've got no one to blame but myself for this one. But I don't think they knew I was doing it like every day, going to school. Yeah. I was a pretty quiet kid as well. So, yeah. Even when I wasn't doing it, it was hard to get any words out of me. So it wouldn't have been much difference, I suppose.
oh, he was the worst, In the mornings, you'd wake up. I remember you'd wake up and I'd be so excited to see him. And he'd come out of his room and I'd be like, hey, bro. And he'd be like,
Yeah, I was so grumpy, eh? I
just
was
like-
so grumpy.
just leave me alone, man. All I ever wanted to do was hang out with him.
Oh.
But no words. Sorry, that was my point, is he didn't talk a lot. That was my point, not my my
I
deep
just
hurt.
I felt like
Deep-
a little tear coming out of his
a
eye.
deep hurt of not getting to spend time with my brother.
Lucky it's on the other side.
Thank you. Can we get the tissues, please?
Wow. And then, so after school, so you didn't like school. So
Yeah.
then what happened after school?
I said to Dad I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I just decided to pursue a career in smoking, weed and surfing.
Truly?
Yeah.
So you didn't do anything
Didn't
after
do
school?
anything, no. And Dad sort of gave me a bit of grace. He said, oh, look, I'll give you a bit of time to just kick back because you've been working so hard at school.
Oi, but you fruit picked when we were younger. You worked hard.
Yeah, I had one job when we were real young
Yeah.
for a few months,
Saved
on
up
holidays or something.
and bought that red line.
Yeah. Oh, didn't you steal that or something? Or sold it or cashed it?
you gave it to me, bro. You gave it to me when I was like 19.
Yeah, so he gave me a little, I'll have a couple of months for the last bit of the year and then think about it next year. And then next year came and I still didn't want to do anything. And then, I just remember it got to the point where one day he said to me, I woke up in the morning and he was going to work and he said, I'm going to come home this afternoon and you're either going to have a job or you're going to get out. So,
Wow.
Yeah, we'd had that sort of conversation
Yeah.
a few times,
Yeah.
but that was the one that I remember.
You're like, oh, okay, I better do something.
Yeah, and I remember thinking all day, oh man, what am I going to do? I don't want to get a job. Nothing appealed to me work-wise.
Wow.
It wasn't that I couldn't work. Like I was a hard worker when I worked,
Yeah.
but nothing appealed to me when I thought, what am I going to do from here on? Like what is going to be my job? So I think he came home and I didn't have any ideas, and so he just said, you're coming to work with me tomorrow. So he took me to the place we were working. Oh, he was working, at the surveying firm in Mudgeeraba.
Treasures.
Yeah, and that was a really good sort of family vibe there. And Dad had worked there for a while, so he just said, I'm bringing Dan to work. We're going to put him to work. And they said, yeah, all good. So I worked there for a while, and I still had that same attitude, though. I kept on calling in sick, and I wanted to hang out with my mates smoking. Eventually, so that went on for actually a while, and eventually the director or one of the directors of the company called me into his office maybe a year or two in and said, mate, you're a great young man, you're a hard worker when you show up to work, but the problem is we never know if you're coming or not. So, and we rely on you. So he was probably one of the first people that taught me about responsibility in a funny way when I look back on it.
Yeah.
Basically, helped me acknowledge the fact that I was actually valued there and that I contributed. And so he said, we're going to give you 2 weeks off, like unpaid, obviously. And you need to decide in that 2 weeks whether you want to work here or not. If you do want a job, it's open for you to come back, but it will be under a new set of guidelines. And if not, then see you later, good luck with your life. And so I, took that first week off like, I don't have to work. I can't even get in trouble for it as well.
Let's go, boys.
Yeah. And then it actually started to hit me a little bit when I had to think that the date was closing in. And I thought, I've got to actually make a call. What am I going to do? Because I knew not working wasn't an option, really. So I went back, told him I wanted to work, and I just put my head down and just went hard.
Come on.
I think we had a few sort of fallouts family-wise as far as me losing it with smoking and drinking and stuff as well around that same time, which helped me sort of try and recalibrate, I guess, and sort of change my life a little bit. But yeah, I worked really hard there, and that job was super good for me.
Awesome.
It was the people there, none of them were Christians or anything either, but just hard-working, honest, reliable people that sort of taught me the value of hard work and responsibility. Yeah.
So you were brought up in the church, or sort of not really?
Not in the church. Brought up with sort of taught the Bible, I guess. Christmas, Easter, we'd go and spend time at my grandparents' place in Jimboomba, and so my grandfather was like hardcore Baptist, but like sort of. He was one of the ones that was trying to introduce Holy Spirit movement sort of stuff to Baptist church. So he believed in speaking in tongues and all that sort of stuff. And so yeah, we got taught that once or twice a year. That was enough for me to remember it when I was older. Yeah, didn't really see it at home so much though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was sort of like just in the background of your life, like you were working, getting on it.
Yeah, I always...
living a life and then, that's right, God's there?
Yeah, if someone was to ask me, like, do you believe in God? I would have always said yes.
Okay.
Even in a peer pressure sort of environment, I always felt super strong about that conviction.
Wow.
It's funny, eh?
Yeah, it wasn't even like I'm not sure, I think. It was like I was born and raised taught that these Bible stories were real. That was actually it was just history.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even a thing.
But it wasn't following God. Correct me if I'm wrong, but because I think I know what you're trying to ask. But following God wasn't a thing. It wasn't like you just believed in God.
There was no relationship.
Yeah, but you didn't.
It's a religion almost.
But there was never a guilty feeling of I'm not following God. I'm not doing anything. It was just like God's real.
Really.
If you need Him,
No, God's real. You were just like, no, God's real.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
There's no experience of like, oh man, I'm doing the wrong thing. I need to be. It's like, no, we're just living life. This is it, and God's real. We hadn't been taught to follow Him.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't until later on when I started to probably mature a little bit that I started thinking about the consequences.
Right.
What I knew, and then how that impacted what I was doing. So I was really immature, probably all the way through into my late 20s, really.
Mid-30s.
Probably mid-30s, yeah. No.
Tell me to mute him if you...
I think definitely around mid-20s I started to get a little bit more of a handle on life. I even still into my early 30s felt like a kid, actually.
Wow.
Like I thought of myself as a young boy, really. So it's just weird, yeah.
So you're working at Treasures, doing better.
Yeah.
You still
still partying heaps.
Really?
By that stage I'd in that period, because it was about 4 or 5 years that I was there for.
Yeah.
I'd met my partner then, Tamika, and I'd...
Zeke, his mum?
Yeah, had a baby with her, Zeke.
Oh, how old were you?
19. I was 19 when he was born.
Wow.
Yeah, and he's 17 now.
Wow.
So that obviously had a huge impact as well as far as the working thing went, because I sort of...
holy moly.
Yeah, I was always... One thing I'm really thankful for is my parents always worked. I always watched them work, and they always worked hard.
Yeah.
So when I had Zeke, working was just like, oh, that's my job now. My primary responsibility is to provide for my son and my wife. So even though I was still doing lots of dumb things, that was really important to me.
Wow.
So I still got a lot of things wrong in that process, but working became a primary because of him.
Wow.
It's actually pretty. I've never thought about it too much, especially because you're my brother. But it's actually pretty crazy having a kid at 19.
So how old were you?
When Zeke was born,
Yeah.
14.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I ended up.
Yeah, that's why you end up with the
That's
tattoo.
why I ended up with a tattoo on my arm.
Oh.
That was when I was either just turning 15 or 15.
And they spelled it wrong.
I did it myself. Oh, nah.
Wow.
But that's actually. Do you remember how you felt when all that was happening?
I was excited, hey.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think I always, even as a young guy, I wanted to have kids. I wanted to have a family.
Yeah.
So when I found out I was having a son, I was pumped. I had no idea, the responsibility that went with it. So I remember when I found out in the hallway of Mum and Dad's house at Miami that they only sold not long ago.
Wow.
And I was so excited. I was super pumped. Yeah, I was like, yeah, this is awesome.
And they're probably
So
going,
sick.
Yeah, we told Mum and Dad, and I was just like, oh gosh, history's repeating itself. Because Mum had me when she was 19. So
Wow.
I think that was in my mind. I was like, oh,
It's all
Mum
good.
had me when she was 19, and they're
all
great.
good.
Mum and Dad are great.
Oh, hang on. Were they? They weren't remarried then, were they? Or were they?
no.
Nah,
Nah, nearly. They must have been nearly
Oh.
remarried.
I can't remember. It's a bit of a blur,
Yeah,
man, to
it's
be
all right.
honest. Yeah, sorry.
So, okay. So you're with Tamika and Zeke's along the way. What's life? Have you changed any?
Nah, I'm probably partying worse at that time of my
Worse?
life. Yeah. So when I met Tamika, she introduced me to a whole bunch of a side of partying, I guess, like party drugs and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And her friends. So I started hanging out with all of them and doing that. So I went from sort of,
Stoner.
smoking pot,
To the
surfing, skating, to partying, clubbing, all that sort of scene.
Wow.
So I managed to maintain work though, I guess. It was more of a nighttime weekend scene rather than a everyday, all the time thing with what pot was. And then I was lucky I had a really good guy there named Steve who he just took me under his wing when I was showing an interest in learning more about surveying and wanting to, I guess, progress in the career. He stayed back late after work and taught me how to use the computers and all the software. And he played a huge part in me sort of transitioning from a boy to a man, I guess, in a sense, which sounds odd, but he set a really great example. He was a super hard worker.
Oh, awesome.
He had a good family. And he actually was the one that he trained me up to take over like a lead role in I was a technician essentially. I didn't have a degree, but he taught me how to do what they were doing. So when he got a job in the mines, he left and I took over his role basically. And then a year later, he called me from the mines and said, "Hey, I got a job in the mines.
I hit the jackpot. Come out.
Do you want to come out?"
Yeah.
And probably in that period as well, I'd sort of started slowing down a little bit, I guess, with partying and stuff.
Right.
And I'd started going to a church across the road from Pacific Fair.
Nuno.
Is it Redoubt? I can't remember.
Revolution.
Yes,
Revolution
yeah.
it was. Yes. Yeah.
So that was my first sort of church experience as an
Really?
adult. Yeah,
What made you go there?
Mum and Dad went there,
okay.
and I just went along with them one time, and it
Okay.
was really fun. So
Yeah.
I was still doing lots of dumb stuff. I was working hard.
You're like 22.
Yeah,
20s.
early
Okay.
20s. But I was working really hard, and I was committed to the things in my life that I had going on.
Yeah.
Partying as well, I was committed to that still. But that was the first church experience that I'd really had where I actually got stuck into it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Would you say you were an addict, a drug addict?
Nah, it was easy for me to stop.
Okay.
When I decided that I didn't want to do it anymore, it was just
Wow,
bang, done.
okay.
Yeah, it was more of a habit, just a bad habit. I just really liked doing it. It was really fun.
It's like a
at the
hobby,
time.
right?
Yeah, I found it fun because I couldn't see the consequences, I guess.
Right.
That's probably why. But then I got exposed to church environment, healthy family, and then in that I'd gone to the mines and I was still coming and going to church, and then my marriage fell apart.
Right.
And so that was the big sort of
Kicker.
Yeah, that was where I started to see all the consequences of the partying and the drug
Right.
use. And
So you were a terrible, like, you thought you were okay, but
totally.
you weren't.
Yeah, I
Right.
thought I had everything balanced and I could still maintain a life with partying. It didn't have any consequences. And I did a lot of dumb stuff when I was partying.
Yeah.
I was unfaithful in my marriage. I was super unreliable, and it wasn't until I started to clean things up a little bit that she decided. She just literally woke up one day. I remember it. It's like etched into my memory. Hopped out of bed, both sat up, and she just said, "I can't do it anymore." It's out of nowhere, and I thought, "Oh, what? Can't do what? What are you talking about?" She said, "I can't do this anymore. I'm done." And
Wow.
it was just for me, it came out of nowhere because I thought everything was all good now.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was a really hard process it took me months to actually understand what was going on.
Yeah.
But she dealt with so much rubbish for years, and then it had just built up, you know.
And you were so blind to it.
I had no idea. I knew that all that stuff was bad, but I thought we just, we moved on from that.
It's all good.
It's done, it's finished. But it wasn't. That was just something that she carried for ages.
Wow.
That was, and the older I got over time and looking back on it, I started to really, like, the more time went on, the more I understood the gravity of what had happened. And I remember years later calling her one day when I was talking to her about Zeke with something, and just talking about that and just apologising and just saying,
Wow.
"I'm so sorry for everything I ever did to you." Like,
Being a douche.
yeah, I just acknowledged. I said, I was a terrible husband. I was a terrible father. I was, I just rattled off all the things that I was aware of that I stuffed up. And she was like in tears on the phone. She was, it's all good. Thanks for saying sorry.
Yeah.
That was like quite a healing sort of process, I think, as well. Because her and I we're good. We're old enough now and mature enough to know that, both made some mistakes and we were young and
you've both done your best to parent.
totally.
Zeke.
Yeah, we've tried to be on this. We're both in very different places in life.
Yeah.
As far as especially faith goes. But we've always both tried to meet each other and just do what's right for him.
Yeah.
Which I'm super thankful for with that,
Yeah.
because I hear a lot of really tough stories, of horrible divorces and situations where people don't get
Courts
along.
and lawyers
yeah.
and-
And we've never had any of that. We
That's
never had
amazing.
any of that stuff. So, yeah.
Wow. So then what? Okay, she's like, you're out.
Yeah.
Then you're literally out.
Yeah. I
So
moved.
what did you do?
I moved straight out of the house we were renting,
Yeah.
left her there with Zeke, and I just kept on contributing to
yeah.
help them be there.
Wow.
And I moved down the road to Mum and Dad's house.
Okay.
And I thought, a couple of months we'll be, we'll sort things out. And but
Literally, same street, eh?
yeah, it was the same street.
Same street
Yeah.
down the
Living in
road.
same street. And yeah, just more time went on, and she just started to move on with her life. And then probably about 3 months after, I realised, oh man, we're not fixing this, and I hit the wall big time. I remember sitting at Mum and Dad's dining table at that house in Miami, and talking to Dad about it, and just losing it. Like,
Wow.
probably the most hectic cry I've ever done in my life.
Wow.
Just like screaming and bawling and like punching the table, and just like I guess the realization of what was going on. Because even though I was young and I'd done lots of dumb stuff, in my mind marriage was forever.
Yeah.
It was definitely my fault. Like, a lot of what happened was my fault, and I understood that. But to me it still wasn't, even watching what happened with Mum and Dad, it still wasn't a thing. You didn't get divorced. It was just...
It wasn't over. It shouldn't have been over.
In my life, I just thought, you've always got something to fix it. But I guess I had that instilled in me from a faith perspective, even though I didn't really have a good faith at that time, but it was sort of drilled into me.
It's like one of those things, one of those pillars that are like, man, you don't get divorced.
When you grow up and they say that by the time you're the age of 12 or whatever, or 7, that you have like fundamental belief, like a core belief system that is unshakable. That was one of those things.
Wow.
Marriage is forever.
And also, at that point, mum and dad are remarried. So you're like, even no matter how bad it gets, you still come back
exactly,
together.
Yeah,
totally.
okay.
You know?
So that was sort of, it helped cement that belief.
Yeah.
But then when she was sort of like, oh no, it's done now. We're moving on. And that I disappeared from church then because that just rocked my whole world.
Yeah.
It undid a core belief, and then so I started questioning everything.
Yeah.
So I
just party harder.
Oh, way worse.
Worse.
I went a whole nother level then.
Wow.
Yeah, I got into like every.
I think we connected a bit at that point, didn't we?
Yeah, because you were going down a similar sort of path, I guess, as far as the party scene goes.
Yeah, your friends
Yeah.
owned a nightclub or something. And
Yeah, that was a slippery slope, that one.
Wow.
Don't have friends that own nightclubs. It's a real lesson in that one. So yeah, I went real crazy then. I basically became the instigator for my circle of friends then. So I was the sort of the ringleader in a sense, with always driving the party to another level.
And that's just because of the pain, you think?
Oh, totally. I was just trying to mask the
Right.
pain. I just didn't want to deal with what had happened. So sobriety.
And God was there,
Oh.
but you don't go to him. It seems like he's just there.
Yeah.
He's not an answer. He's
Yeah.
just there.
well, that's interesting because, like, I don't remember being at Revolution.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I remember going. I don't remember much about it. Remember where it was. I don't remember you being involved there. So you would have actually had some connection there. So
Yeah, not many people my age, I guess.
Right.
It was only a small church, but it wasn't very relational for me at a faith perspective then. It was cool, the church. It was fun.
some Holy Spirit stuff. I remember that. eh?
Yeah, it was really cool. It was a really good experience, and
Yeah.
it drew me in.
Awesome.
But I didn't have a relationship with God still. That's like, when you just said I didn't go to him, it's
Yeah.
because there was still really no relationship. So he wasn't someone I was going to go
And
to.
did you know what you were doing was wrong though, or sort of like, this is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I knew it was wrong. I knew it was bad, but it was just a Band-Aid fix,
Yeah.
and I wasn't mature enough as a man or as a Christian to be able to put that together at the time. I even remember I overdosed on
What?
fantasy on, I think it was New Year's one year.
Yuck.
I just was, it's like a liquid in a little vial, and you're supposed to just take like a couple of little drops.
Couple of drops,
at a
depending on your
time.
body weight.
Yeah, and I'm obviously not a big guy. And I remember being in a club and just tipping the whole thing into my mouth.
You die from that real quick.
And I was in a bad way. So I remember in like times like that, like rolling around, like after I got dragged out of the club by the bouncers because I was just literally everything everywhere, and they just chucked me outside, and then my mates came and found me, and I remember I was rolling around on the ground out there thinking I'm going to die, and I remember saying to God, like, just if you save me now, I'll never do this again. And so I didn't die. I didn't even end up going to hospital. They got me in a limo and got me home, and my mates all just took care of me. And
so
I didn't do that again, but I just went and did more
promise.
dumb stuff, God bailed me out heaps of times, I believe. I look back on that stuff, and I have heaps of situations where I just went so hard on certain substances, and I got to a point where thought I was going to die, and I'd say every time, yeah, totally, that's exactly what happened.
Man,
Yeah.
you know what's crazy? We've never had this conversation ever. We've never talked about this, but yet I've had a dozen experiences of the exact same experience, overdosing or getting into a hectic situation and doing the exact same
Yeah.
thing. God, please save
Yeah.
me, and I'll never do this again.
Yeah.
The exact same thing, and we've never talked about this as brothers before.
And I know that he pulled me out of each of those situations, because right from a young age I remember having that sense like you've got a plan and a purpose.
Come
and
on.
I knew that God had a plan for my life, but I just tried. I think when I it's a bit dusty. Isn't it?
Oh, it's very dusty.
Turn the dust machine down. I think that was part of what drove me down like horrible paths because I had this. It was almost like a weight of responsibility from God that I felt that He called me for something major, and I was afraid of what that was as well. Even though I couldn't really understand that.
Yeah.
I look back on it, and that's what a lot of it I think was, because I always acknowledged Him and I always knew He was there, but I always just intentionally just drove myself down these just horrible paths and then yelled, "Oh, help me, God! Please save me. I'll do whatever you want.
I'll never
I'll
do
serve
it again.
you the rest of my life."
Totally. Because I said that to God when I was like 14 years old. Like, had a little moment in my room after being at a church service in Melbourne with my cousin. And I didn't even know what I was saying, but I heard someone say it at church, and I said, "God, I want to give you my life. Save me, and I'll live my life for you 100%. I'll do whatever you want." And so I knew that I'd said that as well. So I think I was sort of running away from that a little bit.
As you do.
Yeah.
So roll on, your Zeke's how old, and then your Talia sort of comes on the scene?
Yeah, I think about 5 years old roughly when Tamika and I split. I had that toxic sort of party scene, trashing myself, a couple of relationships.
Did you get really ill and really sick and stuff?
I was sick a lot in the sense of like just minor sicknesses. But
like
I mean,
recovering
yeah.
Just from working all week and then burning the wick at both ends on the weekend.
Just like colds and flus and that sort of stuff, But just body just hammered, completely hammered. I actually don't know how. The only way I survived that, seriously, it has to be. There's no other explanation for how I survived what I did, without God. There's just nothing.
That's amazing, man.
Yeah. Then Talia and I had met at my sister. Was it I think Talia was graduating uni, and my sister and Talia were friends.
Oh, okay. Cool.
So they were at a graduation party at the casino or something like that, and I was out partying as I always was, and I ran into them, and then we hung out for the first time outside of meeting Talia around family situations or whatever when Tani had her around, and we just sort of joked around. I was a bit of a dog then as well, so I'd sort of have a bit of a tune, trying to try my luck.
Yeah.
And she basically just told me to get stuffed. Good girl. Yeah, she could see what I was up to, and she wasn't into that sort of stuff. So, I think we had a bit of rapport. Like we knew each other, and I think there was a bit of a glimmer in her eye.
Let's be honest.
Was it there, Charles? But she could see where I was at. And
was that a blind spot in her eye?
It was the plank, and the wood was Daniel.
I was the plank. So we joked around a little bit, and then she told me to go away, and I did.
Sort your life out.
Yeah, and then I think later on, at some stage, I was working 1 week out the mine, and I got a message from her, want to hang out, and so we tried to organise something, didn't work out, and then maybe a few months later again, we ended up catching up. We went out for dinner. We started dating sort of from there. It was sort of off and on, sort of pretty casual sort of thing. And I'd broken up with quite a tough relationship before that, and I just basically said I don't want to do another relationship. I was pretty invested in Zeke at that stage.
Yeah.
And I was trying to drag myself out of the party scene. I was training a lot. I took on triathlon and tried to do a lot of exercise to drag me out of partying.
So you gave yourself like a goal.
Yeah, totally.
So I'm going to do this triathlon, so that means I have to get up early. And
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you ended up doing some big stuff, eh?
Yeah.
Didn't you do the half Ironman or the...
I did a half at Cairns, yeah. But I really enjoyed exercise.
Yeah.
I watched Dad do it when we were younger. We watched Dad get up every morning ever.
Still.
And go at 5 o'clock and go train.
Still today.
Yeah, still today. At 130 years old, I don't know how he does it.
He's so old.
He looks good though. He looks really good. So I used exercise as a focus to try and drag me away from partying.
Right.
And it worked. And then, so I was really focused on Zeke as well. I had at this stage I was working 1 week on, 1 week off. So I had Zeke the whole week that I was back.
Oh, cool.
So that was working great. I was investing in relationship with him. He was, quickly growing into a young boy, like a big boy. And
Yeah.
I was loving, I remember teaching him how to ride a bike, and it was that, that really cool age.
Yeah.
Kicking a ball and playing soccer and that. So that was really fun. And that sort of helped me as well stay away from partying. I was still doing it, but it was a lot less. And I wasn't trashing myself, like writing myself off completely. So then when Talia and I had been dating a little bit, and she'd sort of said, oh, look, I wanted something more out of the relationship. Yeah. I'd sort of said, oh, no, I'm not really there yet. And so that persisted. And then she sort of one day eventually said, oh, look, because we were still on and off sort of thing, and even though she was saying, I want a relationship, and I was, nah. So and it wasn't her. It wasn't that I didn't want a relationship, but I just didn't want a relationship. Yeah. I didn't know what I was doing. I was still trying to figure things out, and I didn't want to go back down the same path that I'd already been. Do the same thing again. I just couldn't go there again. I was still hurt from the previous run. So then one day she said to me, she gave me like an ultimatum. She's like, this is the last time. Like, we're either together, committed, in a relationship, or I'm out, I'm gone, you'll never see me again.
Come on.
So then I had to actually, I actually sat back and thought about it. It was very similar to that job experience with that guy who said, you're either in or you're out. Yeah. I had to actually, it gave me some responsibility.
She goes, you've got 2 weeks. 2 weeks off.
2 weeks to do whatever you want, but make up your mind, boy. And so I decided, look, if I'm going to do this again, then it has to be with God. So God has to be the center of the relationship. And she was sort of raised in a Catholic family. Yeah. Sort of believed in God, I guess, but same sort of thing where I was from. Didn't really have a relationship with Jesus. And so we decided to go to church. Or I said to her, if we're going to do it, I'm going to go to church. We're going to go to church together like a family. And we went to Elevation on Scottsdale Drive. Yeah. Yeah. And once again, it was a cool church. Heaps of people there, nice vibe. But we sort of lacked connection, I guess. It was a good kickoff for us. Yeah. Talia got saved there. Yeah. Which was awesome. And then our relationship was sort of, I guess, pretty good. We both had stuff to deal with. She'd come out of a long-term relationship as well. And we were both sort of figuring out our faith at the same time. So it was a bit of a funny thing. We sort of did it together. Yeah. Which was really good, I guess, in a sense as well. Probably ideally you want to figure that stuff out earlier, right? But we managed to do it together. We went away on a holiday to Canada together. So I was going to Canada for a month. I had it booked in.
Oh, that's right. And I remember this.
Because I had it booked for a long time.
From her side, yeah.
Yeah, and she wasn't... She was coming. Yeah. And then when we were on and off sort of things, she wasn't coming. And this is just my foggy memory. So when we got then we were together, and I said to her, do you want to come to Canada? And she's like, yeah, sure. So I just booked it. I'm pretty sure I just online that right there and then I was at work. I just bought the tickets, booked everything. Yeah, I was already gone. I was already going. So she came, and Ava was conceived in Banff, actually.
There you go.
And then, so she was there with me for 3 weeks, and then I stayed a week on my own because she had to get back to work, I think. I came home with a plan in my mind. We're moving to Canada. I'm going to be...
Wow, really?
Yeah, I had it all worked out in my head. I'm going to...
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So I hadn't talked to her about it. I'm just like, I'm going to go back. I'm going to tell her, hey, look, I've got a great idea. I can get a transfer. I'd already spoken to people that I worked with while I was away, and I was going to get a transfer in mining to a mine in Canada. What? Yeah. And hopped in the car. She picked me up from the airport at Brizzy.
Oh, I remember this, yeah.
She's like, I got a surprise for you. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, you beauty, I love surprise. It's the best holiday ever. And now I'm getting a surprise. It's the best. And I'm thinking in my mind, I've got a surprise for you too.
This is going to be a great day of surprise
gifts. This is the best day ever. I was a bit tired,
There's a great verse that I changed with Talia's. It's like, instead of many of the plans of a man, it's many of the plans of Dan.
Yeah, totally. I do have a lot of
God will make them work.
Yeah.
Amen.
That's what happens in here.
100%. And it still happens.
Yeah, it still does
happens
happen.
quite
You're
a
right.
bit.
Go on.
So-
I want to hear this side of the surprise.
So I think from memory she had a pregnancy test wrapped up, like in a bit of wrapping paper or something. So I just, a bit of wrapping paper, oh, you beauty. She pulls it out of the console, gives it to me, and I'm like, oh, this is so good. Praise the Lord. And I open up this thing, I'm like, what the heck is this? I was like instantly annoyed because I didn't even really know what it was.
Yeah.
But I could sort of...
After 5 seconds,
it
you're
was
like...
it was coming together in my mind. I'm thinking, okay, you know what this is. Surely you've seen one of these before. And then she's like, oh, I'm pregnant. I'm like, oh, no. I was like devastated. Like my whole, in my mind, everything was just like collapsing down, just falling in around me. And then I saw her face, like the disappointment from my reaction. And then it was just this awkward silence, like this horrible,
The whole drive
what should have
home.
been a really awesome moment.
Wow.
Like her first baby, really exciting moment for her. It was just shattered, I think. And I didn't know that, obviously, then.
Yeah.
I was in selfish mode and, yeah, we're moving to Canada. This is the best life ever. I'm going to be a professional snowboarder.
Smoke weed again.
So, yeah, I think Ava was a little bit of an intercept from God. Like he threw a full intercept
Yeah,
past
slow
hard
down.
because he knew that if I went to Canada, it was all I was going back to Party Dan and
Yeah.
living the dream again. The what I thought was the dream,
Darling Ava.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was a rough few weeks, I guess, while I wrapped my head around that.
Yeah.
And I think I might Talia's testimony will back up anyway or iron out what I get wrong. But I think we talked about abortion with Ava. So in that early period, just not knowing what we were doing, and I was angry, I guess, in a sense, because it wasn't part of my plan, We talked about maybe having kids later on when we got back from our holiday and stuff, but I think when it came, I just wasn't really expecting it. And so I think Talia never wanted to have an abortion, but with where I was at, I think I just sort of pushed her that way a little bit, and she was just responding to what I was throwing out there. So we'd sort of almost had it, I think, planned. I can't remember exactly the details, but yeah. And then right at the last sort of moments, we decided, let's just go for it. I'm not an abortion. Like, I'm not, even back then I wasn't a fan of abortion. It was just that I just was so selfish and so, like you said, many of the plans of Dan. I just had all these plans and it wasn't in my plan. But thank God that,
Wow. Yeah.
we didn't do that, because even the thought of doing it, once we decided not to, there was a real grief process after that of the fact that, because then Ava was born and she was amazing and we loved her.
Amazing.
And then we thought back to what we were thinking of doing, and that was like...
How could we even...
Oh, man. Because, as a parent, you can't,
Yeah.
you can't imagine living your life without one of your kids. So, the thought of what we thought about was heavy. Like, it was so heavy. And then, of course, because we were pursuing our faith and everything at that point as well, we had that aspect, like the grief of the Holy Spirit of what we were, thinking about doing. So, yeah, it was a real wild sort of time. But, yeah, we got married not long after, I think Ava was maybe 3 by the time we decided to actually get married, 3 or 4. She was a flower girl at our wedding, so I remember she was old enough to walk and throw flowers and things.
7 years ago, 6 years ago.
Yeah, so we were at chapel. We came to chapel when Ava was born, basically.
Yeah. I remember
so
that.
she's 9 years old now.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a wild.
9 years old and running for president next
mate.
year.
Ava for president.
She'll get it.
Yeah.
She'll get it.
Yeah, it's even still now thinking back to that time. I mean, it felt like a long time, but a lot happened in a really short space there. Like we went through a lot of a roller coaster of
Even since Ava, with Raf and Soph, like, God's done huge things.
Massive things.
Yeah.
Massive thing.
With your work, with your houses, with everything. The
Coming-
kids.
Quitting the mines.
Oh,
and,
yeah, that whole process.
oh my gosh, massive.
Yeah, so I quit the mine.
Yeah.
Ava was maybe 1?
Yeah, massive.
Yeah.
That was
1
a
or
big.
2.
That was a big change.
Yeah, I felt like God just, I want to say audibly, but it wasn't audible. It was like loud in my mind in the sense of a thought, I guess.
Yeah.
Just leave here. And I rang Talia and said, I feel like God just told me to leave. I'm literally
on.
driving down the mine, like driving down the open cut to go underground. And you run a reception pretty quickly. So I called her and said, I feel like God just told me to leave. And she's like, oh man, I'm so glad, because like 2 weeks ago, I had the same feeling, but I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want you to do it because of me. So it took almost a year from that moment for me to actually leave.
That's right.
I was obedient in the sense I started making a plan.
Yeah.
Because I felt like it would be irresponsible just to all of a sudden bail.
Yeah.
Financially, we weren't really in a great position to leave right then and there.
Yeah.
So I think I was sort of grafting in at Chapel by that stage,
Yeah.
and I'd come and spoken to you and or Dan.
Yeah.
And talked to you guys about it, and you sort of, said, "Oh, help me through it." Sort of
Yeah.
said, "Oh, yeah, look, make a plan, get your family in a good position," and
Yeah.
So that was a crazy
Crazy
process. Yeah.
When you think about it, man, it's been an amazing journey.
Oh, I'm
It's
so
been
thankful.
such a great journey.
You bailed the mines with a plan to start your own business.
Yeah.
You started a maintenance
Yeah.
business that has been super successful.
Yeah.
You employ some great friends and people
awesome.
in our community. You got 3 kids on
Beautiful
top
kids.
of Zeke now, so 4 kids.
Yeah, Soph and Raf as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Soph and Raf, and Big Boy just graduated yesterday.
yeah, Zeke. Yep.
Wow.
In wrapping up, what does the next year look like for you and the family?
Oh, so we're leaving on December 27.
You finally gone to Canada?
Yeah, we're going back, baby. Professional snowboarder. No, we're leaving on the 27th of December to drive around Australia for a year in the caravan with
so
the kids.
good.
So we just want to, Talia and I still really feel a call to, I feel, and Talia is feeling
Yes.
Any other plans of Dan?
a call of into ministry. So we
Yeah,
want to,
cool.
we really, I've obviously had a bit of a break at the moment from serving and from,
Yeah.
being involved in chapel for a little while. So we're just going to take a year and just drive around and just really invest into the kids,
Good.
take some time together and, explore Australia, which will be
Awesome.
a real blessing.
He's so good.
God's, been so good to us with a lot of the things we've done and given us the opportunity to do it. So we're going to do that and then hopefully come back with a
Come
plan
on.
to set up a little church somewhere, or
Come on.
I don't know what that looks like yet. Just going to, that's one thing I'm really looking forward to having the year. I'm just going to spend a lot of time just asking God like what this next season looks like.
That's good.
And just investing time into the kids, every day
So
for a
good.
year. There's going to be challenges with it for sure.
Of course.
But it's good. I'm really looking forward to it.
Awesome.
So good.
Yeah.
And man, you've got an amazing praying wife
Yeah, I believe.
who's very gracious and patient.
Yeah.
And thanks for coming on Testify, Dan.
Oh,
So
awesome,
good.
man.
It's
Thanks for
awesome,
having
man.
me.
Appreciate it. Just
Thanks,
your
bro.
openness and vulnerability. So appreciate it, man.
Good.
Good.